The church clock read 6:42 p.m. as the lights began to come on slowly. The scent of old wood mixed with warm coffee from the community kitchen created a cozy, almost familiar atmosphere. The acoustics of the hall returned every timid laugh, every whisper, as if the church itself were listening. In the center of the hall, a simple stage had been set up. No luxury. A microphone on a stand, 2 flags in the background, and a table covered with a white cloth. That was all it needed. Because that night, appearance didn't matter. It was about what would be said. Donald Trump entered through a side door. No fanfare. Just a soft murmur and scattered applause. He was noticeably more restrained than usual. His gestures were slower, his gaze more focused. It was as if he sensed that the night wasn't about him. In the third row, almost invisible among chatting adults, sat Amara. 10 years old, braided hair, small hands clutching a worn leather Bible. She wore a blue dress with a white collar, her shoes polished the night before. She was there with a purpose. Her mother watched her with affection and concern. Before they left the house, she had said, "You can ask, my love, but only if it comes from the heart." Amara didn't reply. She simply nodded, like someone carrying a secret. As the event unfolded, Trump spoke about the economy, security, and his plans for the country. The audience reacted moderately, polite applause, nods, a few smiles, but Amara didn't react. Her eyes were fixed on the stage, but her thoughts were far beyond it. She had rehearsed that question for weeks. She wrote it in her school notebook, scribbled it in the margins of her grandmother's Bible, whispered it softly before bed. It wasn't childish curiosity. It was a need. When the microphone was opened for questions, the hall came alive. People rushed to form a line, eager to speak. Amara hesitated. Her legs felt like paper. But then, she felt her mother's hand gently touch her leg, and she stood up, small among adults, carrying enormous faith in her chest. And no one, absolutely no one, imagined what was about to happen. Amara walked slowly down the side aisle of the church, eyes on the floor, heart pounding so loud she was sure the room could hear it. When she reached the microphone, the murmurs faded. Trump raised his eyebrows slightly. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, they softened. "And what's your question, young lady?" he asked, with a tone that was surprisingly gentle. Amara took a deep breath. Her fingers gripped the Bible tight against her chest. "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" Silence. Not polite silence. A complete, reverent stillness. Trump didn't respond right away. He looked at her, then at the Bible in her hands. His expression shifted. The room seemed to lean in. The weight of the question filled every corner of the church. It wasn't political. It was human, spiritual. Trump opened his mouth, then closed it again. When he looked back at Amara, something in him had changed. She didn't flinch. She wasn't asking for show. She needed the truth. Trump steadied himself against the podium, drew in a long breath. "That's a big question, and I haven't always had an answer for it." He paused again, then began to speak. "When I was about your age, Amara, my parents took me to church every Sunday. I remember sitting in those pews, looking at the stained glass windows, wondering if God was really listening. The audience was utterly still. My father used to say that faith is like a ladder. You climb it one step at a time, sometimes scared, sometimes shaky. But you climb, even if you don't know what's at the top." Amara watched him closely. Her grip on the Bible loosened. Back then, I thought he was just saying things to calm me down. Trump chuckled faintly. A few people did too. But Amara didn't laugh. She waited. But as life went on, when I lost things, faced challenges, failures, that's when I realized faith isn't about being fearless. It's about continuing, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. He looked straight at her. And you know what's hardest, Amara? Sometimes God doesn't answer, and that's where real faith begins. Not when everything makes sense, but when nothing does, and you still believe. The weight of his words filled the room. All eyes were on Amara. She didn't move, but her eyes shimmered. One single tear slipped down her cheek. It wasn't sadness. It was something deeper, like a question long buried had finally been seen. She hugged her Bible close. Her mother gently touched her back. "It's okay, sweetheart." But Amara shook her head. This wasn't sorrow. It was recognition. Trump stepped forward, his face now softened, unguarded. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amara." "That's a beautiful name. And you've got more courage than most adults I've ever met." Amara tried to smile through the emotion. "My grandma used to say, God is always listening, even when you can't hear him." Trump placed a hand over his chest. "She was a wise woman, and you reminded all of us of something we forget. He hears, even in silence." In that moment, they weren't a little girl and a former president. They were two souls standing in truth. Trump returned to the podium in silence. But something in him had shifted. His face carried a new weight. He held the microphone with both hands. "You reminded me of an old pain, Amara. One I kept buried for a long time." The entire hall stayed silent. My brother Fred, he was the heart of our family. A good man, always smiling, generous. But he struggled with things we didn't understand back then. Trump took a breath. He died too young. And when it happened, I got angry. At him. At myself. At God. I thought, why would someone so good be taken? And I was left? Amara listened, eyes fixed on him. For a long time, I stopped praying. I stopped believing. I thought faith was something you lost forever. But one night, I dreamed of Fred. He was smiling, that goofy smile he had. And he said, "Don't be mad, Don. You've got work to do." Trump paused. That moment changed me. I understood that faith isn't about control. It's about trusting that something greater is at work, even when you can't see it. The hall remained silent, but it was a silence that now invited participation. And then, in the back, a hand slowly rose. A man in a plaid shirt, with rough hands and weary eyes, stood up slowly. "Mr. Trump," he said, voice steady but emotional. "I've spent years trying to understand my own faith. Hearing you talk about anger, doubt, and hope makes me wonder, are we all just too afraid to admit we're struggling?" Trump nodded. "I think so. We act like we've got everything figured out, but deep down, we're all searching. Faith isn't clean or easy. It's messy. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying, even when you're unsure." The man nodded slowly and sat back down. Then Amara spoke again. "My grandma used to say, faith is like planting seeds. You bury them in the dark and wait. You don't see anything for a while, but if you keep watering, they grow." Trump smiled warmly. "Your grandma's faith is blooming through you, Amara, and tonight, through all of us." In the front row, a woman with her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun. raised her hand slowly. Her voice trembled as she stood. I lost my husband last year. We were married for 42 years. Since then, I haven't been able to pray. I feel like I've lost my faith. Completely. Trump stepped off the stage, taking a few steps toward her. Do you believe it can come back? He asked gently. She paused. I want to believe. But is it too late? No, never. Trump replied. Faith waits. It hides in quiet places, but it never leaves. Sometimes it returns in the smallest moments, like a girl asking a question with all her heart. The woman cried softly, but her tears no longer spoke of emptiness. They spoke of something rekindled. She looked at Amara, who returned her gaze with tenderness. They didn't need words. Their hearts had already spoken. Trump returned to the stage, but now his posture was different. Not that of a speaker, but of a man humbled by something greater than himself. Do you know what I learned tonight? He asked, turning to Amara. That sometimes the smallest voices ask the biggest questions. Then to the audience. We live in a world full of noise. Everyone wants to talk to be right. But tonight, this girl reminded us all to stop and listen. He turned back to Amara. Amara, you have more faith than many world leaders I've met. Don't ever lose that. He paused, then smiled. And if anyone asks what I took from this night, I'll say, I came here to speak, but I was taught to listen. The audience rose in applause, not for a speech, but for a truth shared, and for a girl who reminded them what mattered. Later that night, outside the church, the Louisiana sky felt clearer. People lingered, exchanging glances and quiet words. It felt like something sacred had just ended, or maybe begun. Amara walked beside her mother, clutching her Bible. But now, with gentleness, as if she carried not just the book, but its living meaning. Mom. Yes, sweetheart? Do you think Grandma saw everything that happened tonight? Her mother stopped. She knelt, adjusted one of Amara's braids, and smiled through tears. She didn't just see it. She smiled and whispered, You went further than I ever dreamed. They hugged tightly. Behind them, the sound of applause lingered in the air. Because that night, faith wasn't preached. It was asked. And a little girl was the answer. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might be needing a little faith today. And if you'd like to follow the next chapters of this journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We still have so much to live and discover together.